I'm Mel Stewart, and this is GMN Podcast. Joining us today, Jack Spitser, SwimSwam chief photographer who's been with us for many, many, many years. He's shot the Junior Nationals, Pro Swim Series, Pan Pacific Championships, World Championships, and the Olympic Games. He's also an entrepreneur, founder and CEO of Epic Drone Tours, and he's a commercial photographer shooting for major brands all over the world, some of the biggest names in sport. This is a great podcast because we're going to debrief World Championships, but also if you're somebody out there and you're an artist or you're an entrepreneur or you're a photographer and you love taking pictures and you're asking yourself, how can I be an Olympic photographer? We're going to ask Jack and he'll break it down.
Buddy, what's up? How you doing?
Doing well. For getting over the jet lag, but happy to be home.
Home from Singapore, home from a whirlwind trip. I know it's a lot. I know you work hard. We're going to get into just how hard photographers work. You've been our chief photographer at SwimSwam for how long?
I think about 7 years now.
7 years. That's extraordinary. We're gonna get into that. But it occurred to me that, for having a conversation, we don't have a lot of these. A lot of people listening probably have their own artistic endeavors. They're sitting out there and they're going, I love photography. But like, how could I follow my bliss? How could I be a photographer at the Olympic Games? And I'm like, if anybody would know, Jack Spitser would know. And I think it's your genesis story. This is the legend of Jack Spitser. How do you become a photographer for the Olympic Games? How did it begin?
Well, it began for me way back in high school, my senior year of high school. I'd always dabbled in photography and home movies and, things that usual creative kids will get into. But then my sister was swimming at Olympic trials my senior year of high school, which was in 2016. And I was there, didn't have a camera, didn't own a camera. So I decided to rent one from a local camera shop in Omaha, Nebraska, and rented a camera, one of those massive 600 millimeter lenses, and just took some photos from the stands where me and my parents were sitting. And some of those photos were of Michael Phelps in his last races on home soil ever. And I took those and other Olympian photos and got some pretty good feedback from them, just from my Instagram and, friends and family. And so I decided to take those to a local club swim meets and started selling them to parents. Basically had those photos on display and would say, hey, pay me and I'll get photos of your kid swimming their events at the meet. And that was my start of my swimming photography days. I then went to college at UCSD and was lucky to be coached under David Marsh, Olympic coach in 2016. And he, of course, is well connected, good friends with Mel. And so he was able to connect me with the right people. And eventually I started assisting under the previous SwimSwam photographer, Mike Lewis, which, got me a lot of experience. I learned a lot. And then when he moved on to work for USA Swimming, I was kind of in the right place at the right time and said to Mel and Braden, hey, I would love to shoot for you guys. And I know you guys were happy with my output from when I shot Junior Nationals for SwimSwam. And, that's how I got in with SwimSwam. Eventually then, about a year later is when the credential process started for Tokyo for the Olympics. And we were able to put in an application. I know that nobody had ever photographed the Olympics for SwimSwam before, but I know you had mentioned like, hey, they have a credential for us reserved because SwimSwam is, of course, the biggest, swimming news platform. So obviously they should have a credential and somebody there shooting. But that's the way that I was able to get in. Obviously, Tokyo then ended up getting delayed, but I ended up going in 2021. But the moral of the story is being able to identify yourself with some big publication. It's very hard to get a credential for the Olympics. That things like World Championships are different. It's a little bit easier and less strict. But for the Olympics, everybody in the world wants to go. So you have to be in with somebody that has the in, whether that's, one of the biggest newspapers, SwimSwam. I think the easiest way is to get a job with one of the agencies because they have all the power now, like Getty Images, Reuters, AP. Those are the ones that have the most credentials because they're the ones providing the images to all the small newspapers across the world that can't afford it. That's definitely the number one way in. But you also don't need a credential. There's a girl I'm friends with. It's a photographer for a competitor news site for swimming, but she went to Paris last year and just shot from the stands and, was able to get a lot of images from the outskirts. So you don't have to be credentialed to be able to go and be creative and get unique shots. But the main thing is just getting out there, letting people see your work. I'm big on, posting on social media and getting it out there and having people, discover you. And that's how you'll eventually get noticed. And
I'm going to jump in here. Yeah. When Mike Lewis was our guy for many years. at SwimSwam, and he's now he's really the chief photographer at USA Swimming, and he's done that for a long period of time. I don't know if they're making a change now, but he's been consistently their guy. He's now announcing for open water. A lot of people don't know this, but he's a national champion in master swimming in the mile. And you know, you swam Division I at, you know, a big college, but way
Two in my time, but yeah.
serious swimmer, you know the culture, you know what to get into. But you were apprenticing underneath him.
Yes.
And it was a need because we needed to shoot age groupers, and we needed people for junior nationals, and
right.
And that's not something that Mike really wanted to do. It was too much the skill, the work was too big, and you're like, you're doing it. You would step up and do it. How old were you when you really started to grind?
Well, that would have been junior nationals in 2018, so I was 20. I just turned 20. And yeah, I remember that. I think I loaded like 2,000 images to your guys' database and I was just like an extra guy going to shoot juniors, you know, for free that Mike had asked me to do. And I think Braden and you looked at that and were like, holy shit, that like nobody's ever given us that many images. Cause I think I spent 4 hours a night, you know, like, oh, I need to impress these guys. And I had a pretty good workflow of just grinding through images.
So yeah. That's what I wanted you to say. You
put in the effort.
Braden and I were sitting back at HQ looking at the images that you were loading, and we were like, whoa, this is a Goliath effort. This is extraordinary. 2,000 images from junior nationals. And then we're like, maybe Jack should shoot NC2As. And Braden's like, no. I said that. And Braden's like, no.
Well, I asked you.
No. We had to admit, you weren't a part of we were making the decision. I was like, whoa. I said, maybe you should do NC2As. And Braden said, no, he is doing NC2As. It's like, I'm coming in heavy and just going unilaterally, no, we want Jack to cover NC2A. Then you go to NC2A. And I think we got, I don't know how many thousands of images we got from NC2As, but it was massive. We have over 1 million in our database, but you become a massive part of it. Do you remember how many images you uploaded from that first NC2A championships?
I think I remember texting you guys. It was like 9,000 after the end of 2 weeks, which is these are edited for. This is not just like taking a photo and loading it. This is individually edited to be colored and to be, you know, composition and cropped. So yeah, I think almost 10 grand.
Okay, so let's so people have understand the scale of the work.
Yeah.
And think about it. You're a writer for SwimSwam. You're sitting at a desk. You're sitting in the media zone. You're watching things. You might step up and go look at a swim. Then you go down and sit at your desk and you know write your story. Now you're a camera. You know you're a photographer at this event. You're carrying around a camera. How heavy is the camera?
Oh God, lighter now than it was back then, but probably 20, 30 pounds once you add everything up.
Just get the massive lens, this telephoto lenses. So you're carrying around 20 pounds. And you're doing it during the prelim session. You're doing it for warm up. You're doing it during the final session. So how many hours are you toting that camera around, and in what positions are you in on deck?
Total in a full day is probably 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 hours total at least, maybe more. The rest of the time spent editing, but with the camera in hand, yeah, probably like 6. And that's not always, we don't get comfortable chairs at NC2As. There's no like media section down on deck. We are sitting on the ground on the corner of the pool with, the biggest guys in swimming in a short course pool, flip turning and splashing and diving, getting waves of water on us while holding the camera up and being squished between 10 photographers from the wall to the flags. So it's not comfortable. It's very hard on your back, on your knees. So yeah, at least at these international meets, we get like a stump to sit on. It's all still not comfortable, but it's a section. But NC2As and meets like that are definitely the hardest. While holding the camera and having your biceps be, activated the whole time.
I have always said this. I've always said that if you are an artist, it is a blue collar effort. It is the sweat of your brow. If you're a great writer, great writers will sit there and they will sweat as they go. It's blowing. But photographers, it is, I imagine chiseling, you're sculpting something. It is hard. And the scale of the work is difficult. And I see you guys and you're drenched in sweat. Your shirts are wet with sweat.
Yep.
And then there's also the fact that you're trying to maneuver around an elite event, and you come from the swimming culture and you're trying to stay out of the way of big star swimmers and coaches, and they're grumpy and they're in the hunt for war. And you're trying to navigate being around them so that they like you so that you can get certain shots.
I think I got yelled at by one of I think it was an Ohio State coach at NC2As this year, one of the biggest relays. And I think I kind of half stood up to try to get a certain angle for a shot. And I blocked his view for maybe 2 seconds. He's like, get out of here, got yelled at. But yeah, you're always trying to stay out of people's way while still being able to get these angles.
So if you're out there and you're thinking, hey, I want to do this, your trajectory going to the Olympics is that you've got to work for it. And it is an enormous amount of work and an enormous amount of time. So just in terms of the swim meet, think about this. So you're starting in the morning. What time do you get to the pool? You shoot the session, then you're eating lunch, then you're editing in the afternoon, then you're going into the evening, then you're editing and uploading at night because you're always uploading in between. So how long is a day? And then let's think about it in terms of Olympic trials, 9 days. So recent 2024 Olympic trials, 9 days. How long is your work day?
Usually about 6 a.m. at least through 6 or 6:30, and then probably not going to sleep until after midnight. And for me, it's a little bit unique. I also have a business on the side, another full-time, it's my day job that I run. And so I'm always having to intersperse emails and getting back to people there. So any extra hours filled with more computer work. But photography side, 6 a.m., you're at the pool by 7:30 or 8 to try to get a good spot. I'm shooting prelims for 2 or 3 hours and working on your computer until, maybe 4 or 5. And you're back to the pool at 6 until 10. And then, it's full 12 plus hour days.
It's definitely love. It's definitely a passion. So let's let people into, I'm not going to tell them the economics of it, but we're going to give them an idea of what it's about. The cost for photography has been flattened by Getty Images, by large scale companies. So it's so much cheaper to just, for SwimSwam or for anybody in the media business, just to pay the rate for the agency photographer who's going to get the images. So if you're a photographer and you're out there and you're building a business, you have to be so good that you're getting better images than professionals who are shooting all sporting events. So it takes unique knowledge. You have to know who's the best and what pictures people want in a specific culture. If you're not a part of the culture, you don't know. But Jack is as much a journalist as he is a photographer, meaning he knows where the story is. He knows where to point his camera.
Yeah.
When you're shooting, are you always thinking in terms of narrative? I know you are, but what's going through your mind?
Yeah. I think that's a big piece of feedback I get is my knowledge of swimming getting poured into my photography. Majority of the photographers at these meets are not former swimmers. They shoot all different sports. They're looking for, the cool water shot, maybe a cool reaction here and there, but I'm always looking for those unique moments where I know that somebody's going to be, high-fiving, or where they're going to be exhausted after the race, or the spot where they come up, where they break out of the water that most people don't know. It's all these little moments that get brought into the sport that most people don't notice, that I think I have a special ability to capture, which, especially from the emotional side of it, I always know what to look for, and how to bring those emotions out from the swimmers. Like last year, I didn't see anybody else get that photo, but there was a photo after the 400 free in Paris where one of the athletes was on the lane line cheering. He won, and the other athlete got fourth by 0.2 of a second, and he was sitting with his head in his hands. And so they both had their heads in their hands. One was for triumph, and one was because he had just missed out medaling. So just little emotional pieces like that most people wouldn't know to look for.
And one image can tell a story better than a 5,000 word feature if it's the right moment.
Right.
And another thing that you do is your athletes exit the pool, and you are really eyes on when they're exiting the pool, and you're trying to capture something because you don't know at what point we're going to see a reaction. And it's an emotional reaction. They can come and they can talk to Coleman after the race and talk through their race and explain everything. But really, we know how they felt about that race by everything that's on their face. And you get that shot.
Yeah, that's one of the coolest parts of it, is being able to see the 15 different emotions from swimmers. Someone's happy that they just won the best time. Someone's pissed they didn't final. So being able to capture that as they're walking away is a special part of what we do that I love to capture. Because it's not, anybody can take a million photos of swimming, but it's capturing the personality of the athlete is very important, just as important as getting them swimming.
Your skill set also includes, if Coleman isn't on deck, if I'm not there, if anyone's not there, I can say, Jack, pop it over in a video mode. I need you to go do this interview. And you do that from time to time. Are you uncomfortable with that, or does it feel like a comfortable sock to you? Do you feel like, I got this?
No, the video side is my background, and I run a video business. And so I personally I grew up wanting to be a filmmaker and a director. So anytime I get to do video, I'm happy.
So it should be said that, in full disclosure, so Jack shoots for us editorially. And the way a news organization works and the way the cost basis can come into line is that, he shoots these images. We don't own these images. We own a license to Jack's images, and Jack owns those images. So that image, that moment in time, is his ownership. It's like a house. He owns that real estate. And we license for the pleasure of running it for a news story, to tell a story in a moment. Maybe we use that image later to write some news 3 months from now, a year from now, but we're licensing that. It's like we're renting it. And in Jack's world, Jack's very creative. And if you want to be great at this, you also capture the attention of companies. And I don't know how much you can talk about that, but Jack has also developed a commercial business, and that is entirely Jack's business. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that started and who you work with?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I can credit anything I do with any of the brands to my work with SwimSwam, because that's what gets me noticed. And I know that early on you were making a lot of introductions to different people, but I'm very lucky to get to work with a wide majority of the different swimming brands. I'm going to close this window really quick because it's loud.
If you will take this moment and instead of making an edit, you just glance at all the images behind him. So these images tell a story. It's like his journey around the world. So he was at the Olympics, and in the middle, you say, it looks like volleyball, or is that, no, it's tennis.
No, that's Rafael Nadal in his last match ever.
Yeah, so you're at the Olympics. He's got a credential. We don't need that image, but Jack goes over there. He's got a credential to shoot at the Olympics. And yeah, you captured tennis. So
yeah.
Talk to me about
anyway. So the brands, I'm very lucky to work with most of them. I've done a lot of work both at swim meets and then on the side, like actual product shoots for them, for Speedo, Mizuno, Arena, A3, all the different brands. And that's my personal favorite, is when we get to go outside of the swim meet and do different shoots for the product. So we'll take the different athletes that are sponsored and have a stage set at different pool decks across the country, and I'll get one-on-one time with the athletes to get really creative and create these images rather than just capturing the action that's happening at a swim meet, which I think is a lot of fun because I can do things like underwater with lighting. I can have lighting staged. I can get different looks. And so I've gotten very, very fortunate to work with a lot of these brands and a lot of the athletes. Like with Speedo, I did a lot of shoots with Ryan Murphy and Caleb Dressel. I've done a lot with, the Walshes and all the Arena people at Arena, which is a lot of fun. I love getting to get to know the athletes, to get a little more creative and work with great people, because the reason I got into swimming photography in the first place was to stay in the sport without actually having to continue to swim in a pool. So that's what I love to do.
There was a competition this past year in season, and we'd had a period of time where there weren't meets, and I needed somebody to shoot it. I wasn't sure who could shoot it. I talked to you, and you're like, "Is in Austin," and it was it was a Bob meet, and you're like, "Yeah, I'll come out, but what I want to capture underwater." And I was like, okay, if Bob's cool with that, can you call it, let's loop Bob in. And you did. And Bob, so we're talking about Bob Bellman. What did Bob say?
He said, absolutely. He's very always willing for, I think mainly from a marketing perspective for recruiting. I'm always looking for more media, but he let me show up. I thought I was going to have a whole practice because it was the day before the meet. They were just doing a warm up. So I had about 20 minutes in the water, which I brought my whole setup and everything. So I thought I would have more time, but I made the best of it. I got, Leon and a couple athletes doing maybe 2 dives and a couple 50s, but I was able to make it work. But the images were really cool because that pool is great because it's pretty dark, but they have bright lights along the top of the pool, and I have a strobe underwater. So it's, brightens the athletes under. And so it looks like this really cool canvas.
Lit beautifully. They look graceful in the water. You're capturing moments of time. This starts to transcend sport and look like art. I don't know if I think you might know, but I made a selection for Rex Maurer for the cover. Rex Maurer will be the cover of the 2025 college preview issue. That is a Jack Spitser image. And
didn't even tell me yet. Yeah,
I didn't tell you. I'm telling you, the pod was saving it. I was saving it. Yeah. So that capture in season of Rex Maurer moving through the water, we felt like he would be a great cover. He is. We ranked the top 25 athletes in the NCAA D1 men and women, and Maurer is number 3, but he makes the cover because of the
image that you got.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad Rex was at practice that day. He has a really unique stroke underwater, which I thought was captured pretty cool.
He's going to be a developing story next year. I think everybody knows that. He swam lights out at the last NC2As. We covered your commercial stuff, and I just wanted to say one thing on that. I was a Speedo athlete in the 90s for many, many years. Swimmers aren't models. You've got to, and most people, when there's a camera there and you're not in your element doing the thing that you do, and you're wearing product, right, the photographer matters. So we always had a commercial photographer who was from outside of swimming, and it was always trying to build a relationship. And I always felt like it was good. They were great. But if I had someone like you, I think I would have felt a lot more comfortable from the jump. How do you work with talent? You're working with the biggest swimmers in sport. Those are the people who get the endorsement deals. How do you work with them on commercial shoots?
Yeah, I just always try to make it as fun as possible. Keeping things light. I know a lot of photographers like to be really serious and act tough and things like that. But I just like being a fun person to be around. There is definitely a level of direction to the job. It's not just capturing. When it's just you and an athlete on a deck, they don't, like you said, they don't immediately know what pose to get in. Lydia Jacoby is very good. She's, I think, actually modeling outside of swimming, so she's really easy to work with. But most of the time, I have to specifically tell them exactly what to do, whether that's different stretches to do, a different pose, in whatever the product is. And then, of course, when we're in the water, they know how to swim, so I don't have to direct there. But anything on deck is a lot of back and forth and trying to find that look.
You were saying, hey, I made an introduction. The truth is, I didn't have to make introductions for you. Everybody wanted to work with you because of your other business, and we have to talk about that. You are an entrepreneur. You said earlier, I want to be a filmmaker, and you are this filmmaker in a commercial space. Epic Drone Tours is if anybody's on Instagram, they've probably seen these extraordinary videos that you put up. Tell me about your company, what you do, and where you've shot, because you've shot professional sports franchises, the biggest hotels around the world, award shows. Unpack that for me.
Yeah. In 2020, during COVID, there's obviously not many events or swim meets or anything going on. So I needed some sort of way, freelance way to make money, and saw this really cool idea of these indoor drone fly-throughs through houses. And so I reached out to a local drone shop and asked if they had anybody that flew these kinds of drones. It's a very unique style of drone flying. It's not just like showing up at a beach and flying the drone. You have the goggles on and you're manually flying the drone. It's like driving manual versus automatic. And if you let go, drone's going to fall out of the sky. So it's a very specific skill. And one of my old friends from elementary school had reached out, and he learned those drones during COVID. And so we filmed a few friends' houses, and then I blasted that on Instagram to about 200 realtors. And the first one that paid us to come out was in Hawaii. We went to film Justin Bieber's vacation home that he was selling, and that was our first paid shoot.
How much was that house now? What was the square footage?
It was about 10,000 square feet, and it had a private waterfall and golf course. And, it's a crazy house. We can clip a section of it here. But so that was our first paid shoot, and that immediately kind of skyrocketed us into the luxury real estate market in Beverly Hills and La Jolla, everywhere in Southern California, because it was this brand new style of video that nobody had ever seen before. Nowadays, it's very popular. In the last 5 years, everybody's doing it. But back then, it was like the new thing to use to market. So we did that for about a year, and then realized that residential real estate's a little tough to work with. Realtors are a little bit cheap, a little bit of pains. They all are fighting. It's just not a very good market to be in. So we moved into the commercial world, commercial real estate. So I filmed a lot of massive warehouses and office buildings and, million square foot manufacturing plants and hotels. Hotels is our bread and butter now. We do full marketing packages for hotels across the country, including Ritz-Carlton, all the some of the nicest resorts that we get to go stay at and film. We did the biggest pediatric hospital in the country in Atlanta, 15 floors, and we had over 100 volunteers that were in the video that we were directing and staging throughout, all at once it was a one take. And so that was about a year of planning from when we first talked to them to finally shooting. We do all of the drone work for the San Diego Padres, like you were mentioning, which is a lot of fun. So we get to go to Padres games and fly the drone live for the broadcast. So yeah, a lot of different cool things that keeps me busy.
You shot the Golden Globes.
Golden Globes too.
How did you get the Golden Globes gig?
We do a lot of outreach. So we send hundreds of emails every day to all the hotels and clients that we want to work with. And one of them was the Beverly Hilton in LA. There's actually the marketing agency that runs their social media. And so they connected us with the Beverly Hilton just for a different shoot at the hotel. And so we were doing this shoot last November. It was just like a interview piece for one of their staff members. And we were talking about the Golden Globes because they're at that hotel every single year for the last 50 something years. And we were like, I think it'd be super cool to show the like behind the scenes of the Golden Globes. You know, they serve like 15,000 glasses of wine every year, all the different people that go into feeding all of the different celebrities. And so we spent 3 days at the hotel throughout the production of the Golden Globes, saw them, how they set it all up, how they put the red carpet on. We got to fly the drone right down the red carpet. And then on the day of, myself and one of our team members who had our cameras, we were on the red carpet, you know, weeding our way through all of the biggest celebrities. You know, Harrison Ford, like bumped into shoulders with him, and we were just taking photos of all the, you know, people that year on the red carpet.
Don't be afraid.
So that was just me asking the client that we were already working with. Like, I just gave them that idea. So it wasn't like they came to us with that. It was just kind of a spur of the moment.
And you shot photos at an Olympic trial. I want to take pictures. She went and rented a camera. You were a kid in high school.
Yep.
And you started there. And now you find yourself with 2 businesses and you're shooting the Golden Globes, rubbing shoulders with Harrison Ford. Not bad. How old are you?
I'm 27 now. I think another good piece of the backstory. Right after I shot Junior Nationals in 2018, another David Marsh story, he introduced me. He was doing a swim camp, and there was these couple families that were doing a private lesson at UCSD. And so I was there to kind of help out with them. And I befriended some of the parents there. And basically I asked if they would like me to come out to where they lived in New York to continue to coach their kid for another week. You know, he was a rising swimmer. He was in high school. And so I wanted to continue to work with him. So I went out there, spent a week with them, and then took photos with my very basic camera that I owned at the time. And they basically had said, you need to be a photographer. This is your calling. You know, how can we help? And I was like, well, kind of need a new camera. So I kind of put together this proposition for them of if they would be willing to help invest in me and my career, not at all thinking that it would actually work. I was just going to make the ask. I've never been more nervous to ask anything in my life. And then, you know, a couple months later, they did that, bought me the nicest camera on the market. And that's what I eventually used to go shoot NCAAs in 2019, which the gear is not that important in photography, but it matters to an extent to be able to get the kind of shots that we need to stay competitive.
How expensive was that camera?
It was about $12,000 or $13,000, I think, that I was gifted, which was, you know, the greatest gift and most generous thing that's ever happened to me. And I'm forever grateful, because I don't know if I would have been shooting with you guys if I didn't have that gear.
It matters. Gear matters, but yeah, you're right. It's not. There's a whole lot more that goes into it, because we already described you're carrying 20 pounds around. You got to be willing to do the work. All right. That's your Genesis story. I wanted people to know that. I wanted to have some insight into you and what you've done and how your work is spread out from beyond the pool into all these cool places, commercial shoots, your Epic Drones business, drone tours. We'll throw up a link so people know where you're at if they've never seen Epic Drones, because they'll get stuck on your channel for a while. World Championships. Yeah. You weren't going to go to this, a post-Olympic year. You weren't going to go to World Championships. You're a chief photographer. You didn't need to do that. Why did you change your mind?
I can't believe that was only less than 2 weeks ago. About 4 days before the meet started, I got messaged by probably 5 different people between a couple of universities and some brands asking if I was going. You know, I originally wasn't, because, you know, I went to Paris for a long time last year. I have a business to run. I'm training to do an Ironman, so I didn't really want to be gone across the world. But a lot of people were asking me if I was going, and then I saw that a lot of my photographer friends were also going. So I knew I was going to have some FOMO and be sad when I saw their work. So I was like, financially, it makes too much sense, and I wanted to be there for all the action, because I had a feeling there would be some cool swims. So I decided to go and bought a flight 4 days before. Luckily, it actually wasn't that expensive to get a flight last minute. But
so Singapore is, was it, when you boots on the ground, you get there, are you aware of what's going on? Are you aware, hey, you know, Team USA is sick? Are you hearing anything about this? What was it like in the venue?
Yeah, I think I was on the plane, started reading different, SwimSwam article or whatever, hearing the news. Which I was a little bit upset about at first. I was like, damn, am I deciding to come to this the 1 year where everybody is, super sick? So I was hearing it, and nobody was really talking about it on deck. The first prelim session was actually pretty good. There was some good swims, so I don't think people were too worried until a couple of the swimmers started pulling out of events. But, it was definitely an interesting vibe. There was sickness from not only the U.S. team, a lot of different teams. So the first few days you could kind of tell, but I think by the second half, people started recovering and ended up being really good. Is there
a describe World Aquatics, describe the politics and the ecosystem of being a photographer at a world championships.
How fraught is that? What's going on in there?
So nowadays at this Worlds, you're split up into both the blue bibs and the green bibs. Blue bibs are all of the agencies. We were talking about how, all the agencies are making it harder and harder to be an independent photographer. These agencies pay World Aquatics, the IOC, whoever's running the meets, to have special access at this meet because they're the ones that are going to sell and distribute it to all of the news publications across the world. So you only get a blue bib and get the prime spots if you're an agency. So that's right next to the blocks. It's the best photo position at the pool. Full stop. Nobody other than the agencies get to go there. And then if you had a blue bib, you also could go behind the blocks and roam around the deck wherever you want. If you're a green bib, which is everybody else, we had one position just at the turn end of the pool. So we're 50 meters away from seeing any faces or action. That there was no getting around that. Me and a lot of the other photographers were saying this is the worst it's been in a while because they usually at least give us a couple different, sections. We were able to go up in the stands, but obviously that's not that great. But that was the politics of it. I tried to vouch to get a blue bib. They were like, nope, you need to have be working with an agency. They let us, if we had a special request, we could go for one event to behind the blocks, so at the turn end, which I did a couple times. But again, they make non-agency people work a lot harder to get the shots that they need.
So what I'm hearing from you is if you're a journalist and you're trying to tell the story for the Fourth Estate, it's incredibly hard. It's gotten worse every year. But if you're a massive $1 billion plus agency and company,
pretty well,
they get the prime spots.
Yes. That's how it was at the Olympics. You can't sell your work commercially because, the agencies own those rights. So it's every year there's a little bit more bureaucracy that goes into it, I'm finding.
How do you feel about that? What is your feeling?
I don't love it. I don't think any photographer does. I think that we're going towards eventually only having agencies. Because like you said, it's going to eventually not make sense to pay all this money to go out when people can just pay for the images. That's the benefit of having somebody there is you get something different. Every publication is going to use the same 12 photos of Katie Ledecky or whoever you're shooting. So I do think there's value to differentiating and having that creativity, but they're just making it harder and harder. 10 years from now, I have no idea how it's going to be.
Some of my favorite shots are what you put up on social media. So you do a little video and you put your hand down, you turn the camera and you turn towards yourself, you hit the thing and you show yourself shooting, and then the music swells and then you show what you've captured. And it epitomizes why it's important to have somebody who knows the culture and is an artist and knows the story to capture. Because in those moments, it makes sense. It feels the emotional impact hits you in the chest. And that's why I'm not somebody who would say I don't like it. I'm furious that it's moving to an agency world and a multi-billion-dollar industry where they take over and they control everything. Because what we're losing is we're losing that narrative and emotional impact.
Yeah.
Can you share some of that so we can cut a few of those into this podcast and give people actual if they captured on video?
Yeah, definitely. We can cut them. I love those. I love showing behind the scenes. Even in my drone business, number one thing we post on social media is us doing the work, not just the work itself, because it's important to see the backstory of how people are capturing different things, the angles and positions you have to be in. But back to the agency side, I'm good friends with the former head photographer for Getty but he was their head photographer for 15 years. He basically created the sports department of Getty Images, and he's been freelance for about 15 years now because he saw where the agency world was going and he didn't like it because, they're siphoning everybody out and taking away the creativity. When you work for them, they tell you where to go. They tell you exactly what to shoot, exactly how to shoot. There's no flexibility around it.
It starts to become plain vanilla.
Yeah.
It starts to be, everything looks the same. I hate that. That's the reason why we work with you is we want something unique and interesting that feels personal. Well, I mean, you're not only a professional and an artist in this area, so, with extraordinary expertise in swimming, you're a fan. So what's driving you? What do you want to capture? Your World Championships. What did you want to capture at this World Championships?
As many reactions as I could get. That's always the goal, is getting the emotions, whether good or bad. Trials. I remember a photo that I took of Jillian Cox. She had I forget if it was the 800 or the 1500, but the first time she didn't make the team and she had her head in her hands on the wall, super upset. I still posted it. You know, people would think like, oh, don't share the negative things, but I posted it. I used it. She eventually later in the meet made it in the 1500 or whatever, might be opposite, but she eventually used that and then posted that photo on social media as her like, you know, this was me a couple days ago and now I'm made world championships. So capturing those different moments that people usually too afraid to is always what I'm looking for. For my favorite images, of course, were from Leon Marchand going the world record by a second and a half in the 200 IM. That was the one event that I did put in a request to go behind the blocks. In an IM event, everybody else was just staying in our section, but I knew that was going to be the one because I wanted to be head on because they look directly over the pool for the results. So I knew he'd be looking right towards me. So I went right in front of the block and got him, you know, up on the block. And it looks like he's looking at my camera. So that was my favorite moment of the meet that I knew to look for. And then of course, Katie Ledecky in the 800 was the other good one, but there was a lot of good moments.
So how do you make a choice? You've got your one guy, your one lens. Katie Ledecky has this triumphant win. She holds off the young upstart and rapidly rising star of Summer McIntosh. You've got to capture Ledecky, but we know Summer is reacting, you know, she doesn't like losing, which I love about her. So how do you get both of those shots?
Going back and forth. That's something I'm pretty good at is, you know, kind of transitioning between two athletes. You know I usually will look to see who's going to win. I'll get the winner first. It's usually a pretty immediate reaction. And then I'll go to, you know, down the line to get the other reactions. Summer, I think in the 200 fly, when she missed the world record, I got a photo of what she was mouthing, which everyone saw. But, you know, looking for those little moments is something I try to do. I don't like missing big moments though. So sometimes I do. Like in the 50 fly, I missed the big reaction from Maxime Grousset because I thought that Noé Ponte was going to do something cool as well, or be, you know, super pissed off because he had just lost barely. So I was just looking in the wrong place. So sometimes looking around doesn't help, but it usually works out.
For those who may not know what he was referencing with Summer dropped an F-bomb. She dropped 2 F-bombs and you captured one of them, which some people have a problem with. I like it when athletes show their anger. I want to know. I think it's BS when people are in sport at the height of drama, living out something that's real and not fictional. And I want to know when they're pissed off. I want to know when they're disappointed. I want to know when they're sad because that's, you know, we also know that people are sad because they have moments where they have elation.
Every other sport does it and shows it. And people here want everybody to just be nice.
You know, we show it in all sports. This just be nice is not real, and that's not swimming, and that's not sport. I personally think that I think USA Swimming, our governing body, has for a very long time infantilized our sport, meaning everybody's just smiling and they're happy, and that's simply not real. It's also boring.
Yeah,
but yeah, we should have a full range of our emotions. Does Leon know who you are? Does Leon Marchand know who you got it?
He I actually, when I was in Austin, me and my girlfriend might be moving to Austin next year. And so I was talking to him about like places to move and, you know, where to live. He posted my images the night of the 200 IM because I was first. You know, I got those up within a half hour after the race and he saw them and messaged me and was like, can you send me these? So there's a benefit to doing that grind and having speed. But yeah, he's a cool guy. He's a cool guy behind the scenes.
That's so casual. So people would like to know that. It's like, hey, Because you started in high school shooting from the stands, you rent a camera, trials, you shoot from the stands. Now, all these years later, you're capturing Marchand breaks world record by a second and a half, and then you get the images up, and he's messaging you. He messaged me. He's telling me where I could live if me and my partner want to move to Austin. Really? Yeah, it's a small insular world. And it's pretty cool that you get to know all these people. You get to know them in a very intimate way too. You become friends.
Definitely. When I was in Austin, I had to ask him to do a start, which I was very grateful that he did because I know that training at that level is very particular when you're, you know, tapering and things like that. But he's always willing to help and get the shot.
Did you think he was going to break the world record in 200 IM?
That's why that is the main reason I went to this meet. I knew that he was going to break that record, and I knew I was going to sit at home and be upset that I missed it. So, yes, I had a feeling, not by a second and a half. I would never have said that, but I had a feeling that was going to happen once he scratched the 200s to focus on it. I'm glad that I made that decision.
And you're a 400 IMer, aren't you? IM was
It was my best.
So you're biased. You like the IMers.
I do. Long course 4IM was I'm probably the only person in the world that actually loves that event, but that's my favorite.
Okay, so I got to wind down this podcast. We got to roll into our next interview. But here's this is something I have to ask you. Founder, CEO, Epic John Tours, chief photographer, SwimSwam, and you also train for triathlons. And like that, it just sounds like too much work to me. Right? So why are you training for triathlons?
After I graduated, I kept going to swim meets for about 2 years without actually training. I'd train for about a week going into a swim meet, and I went best times for 2 years in the 100 free. Every single time I swam it, dropped another couple tenths, ended up being a second and a half faster 2 years out of college than I ever was in college, which said something about my training. But then that obviously took its toll. I didn't want to keep swimming, but I started to gain some weight and was getting a little lazy, needed something to do. And I always do better when I have, a structure and a goal to go for. I can't just go casually work out. And so my roommate and I, in January of last year, decided, hey, let's sign up for a half Ironman 3 months before it. And so that immediately got me into shape, got me to train. And so I've done 3 half Ironmans since then, and the next is a full Ironman in October.
If I had to, okay, thank you for answering that question. Perfect. If I had to poll swim fans, coaches, athletes, and I had to say, hey, would you rather shoot a World Championships, or would you rather go to World Championships? Are you more excited about World Championships or Pan Pacific Games in Southern California at an outdoor meet? They'd be like, World Championships. Pan Pacific Championships is like kind of meh. But Jack Spitser is probably very excited.
I'm very excited
to shoot in Southern California in the sun. Can you explain to us why it's so fantastic to capture swimming in the Southern California sun?
Sun is a photographer for swimming's best friend. You get shadow, you get a light, you get bright light. I am actually heading probably in about an hour up to Irvine to capture Dressel and a couple other swimmers up in Irvine because of the sun. If it was an indoor pool, I just got back from Worlds, I would not be going. But because of that sun, that's the best opportunity. You just get so much more creativity. Indoor pools, you have to you get grain on the photos. It's super dark. It doesn't look good. But in the sun, you can get a different photo every few feet because of the way that the light reacts on the swimmer.
Is the sun different in Southern California in the evenings as finals are rolling off?
It's the opposite side, and it's a different color. So it always casts a nice sunset glow. Golden hour is real in swimming in Southern California.
Golden hour is real. It's beautiful. A lot of our commercial shoots for the major brands, it seems like they were always, you're always capturing in Southern California. All right. I've asked all the questions. Did I miss any questions? Is there anything that I missed in this conversation?
No, I don't think so. I think Worlds was a lot of fun. What I get for World Championships, there's another kid that's 16 years old that was there shooting, that was able to get a credential through a podcast, a swimming podcast. And he's just been going to all the meets, getting credentials, and I think self-funding to go there. So it's definitely possible to go shoot these competitions. The Olympics is a different story, but as long as you put in that effort and have that grind as a youngster, then you can be in these positions for sure.
All right, buddy. Well, you come back on. We'll bring you back on after Pan Pacific Championships next summer to talk about all the beautiful shots in the sun. You going to do it?
Absolutely. Sounds good.